Hi, everybody. This is Bob Goodwin, the president of Career Club, and welcome to another episode of Cool Companies You Should Know, brought to you by Career Club. So this is one of my favorite podcast type that we do because we get to do exactly what the title says, talk about cool companies that you may not have heard of yet. And once you do, you're going to be like, wow, that is really a cool company. Before we get started, just a little bit about Career Club, if you're not familiar with us. We're using proven sales and marketing techniques to help people find a career that matters to them. We work both with individuals as well as with companies who find themselves in the unfortunate position of having to lay off some of their associates. If you'd like to learn more about Career Club, you're welcome to at career.club. I'd also encourage you to connect with me directly on LinkedIn, as well as follow Career Club. We are literally putting content out all the time that we think that you would find helpful, whether it's on topics around HR, leadership, cool companies in the data and analytics world, or your career in general. So also, this is a live event. So please let us know where you're calling in from and say hello. If you've got questions or comments as we go, we would love to take those from you. So it's always more engaging when people participate. So please feel free to do that. And so with that, I would like to add into the stream here my guest, Nevin Raj, one of the co-founders of Grata. Nevin, welcome.
Hey, Bob. Thanks for having me.
No, it is such a pleasure to have you. Now, I need to be full disclosure, and I've never had to do this before. In the time that it's been since I discovered Grata, and we had talked about you coming on, Career Club's actually become a client of Grata. So I am a true believer when I say that Grata is a cool company that we needed to know, and I'm glad that we did. So again, with that, welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Bob. Nothing speaks more to actually using the product.
Yeah, exactly. So very, very cool. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. As is our custom, Nevin, we like to help our viewers just get to know you just a little bit personally so we know who we're talking to. So 5 easy questions, and then we'll kind of dive into the good stuff here. But where were you born and raised?
In Flemington, New Jersey. That is West Central Jersey, so not the suburb of New York, but true Jersey.
I did. Somerset County?
Hunterdon.
Dang it. We lived in Morristown for 5 years. So
yeah, 20 minutes from my hometown.
Yeah, exactly. And then a little bit about where you went to school, college?
Yep, went to Harvard undergrad.
Mm-hmm. What was your degree?
Studied applied math and statistics.
Oh my gosh, well, I'm immediately out of this conversation. Now you said undergrad. Do you have a grad degree as well?
No, just an undergrad.
Yeah, not just an undergrad from Harvard. Well, do the best you can with that. And just a little bit about your family.
Yeah, I grew up family of 4. So parents immigrated here from India in the late 80s, early 90s. And then I have a younger sister. She's 3 years younger than me. Her name is Tara. She is in tech. And so she worked at Microsoft, now at Amazon, and is managing a team under the Alexa AI group.
So she's out in Washington?
Yeah, she's out in Seattle.
Yeah, very cool. And then just a little bit about your career arc. I think it's always interesting to learn how you got here.
Yeah, I started off my career actually with internships during school, spent a summer at a company called Axial that's tangentially in our space in the M&A world, investment banking at Jefferies. And then my first job was at McKinsey. I was a business analyst in the New York office as a management consultant, and then moved to a private equity firm in Boston called Riverside Partners. And then thereafter started Grata Data and then moved into Grata as we are today.
No, and I'm very, very much looking forward to how that all came about. We'll get to that in just a minute. What do we find you doing? What are your hobbies or interests when you're not doing all things Grata?
Yeah, Grata is a big part of my life, but when I'm not, I've always been into puzzles and brain teasers. Most recently, my girlfriend and I have gotten into the New York Times puzzles, and we started off with the NYT Mini, and now we're into the cryptic crosswords, which are I would say probably some of the most challenging ones that I've seen. So cryptics, word, we do Wordle, we do spelling bee, all the New York Times games.
No, so now you had me there because that is a big part of what I like to do. I am a huge crossword puzzle addict. And every day, my youngest son, who's up in New York, Parker, we text each other back screenshots of our times on the New York Times crossword puzzle. And working on a streak, how long you can complete it.
Yeah.
So
we're more spotty with it. And I'm not at the level of timing, but the first time I did it took me an entire weekend, and now we're down to minutes to hours.
There you go. No, no, exactly. Because I remember one time seeing like average time to complete this puzzle should be 12 minutes. I'm like, what? Who can do this in 12 minutes? So anyway, that's cool. So just kind of high level, and then we'll get into sort of the history of Grata. But at a high level, can you explain for folks what you guys do?
Yeah, for sure. Grata is a deal sourcing platform. So we ultimately help investors, bankers, corporates, anyone, any service providers find, research, and engage with middle market private companies. And we've
Okay.
built a pretty cool technology to do that. Probably why we're on the Cool Companies show with you today, which is really a search engine technology that leverages a lot of the similar infrastructure and algorithms as, say, Google and Yahoo and Bing and others to go out to the internet and find information and curate that information on companies and make that searchable and accessible to users.
Okay. So having led Numerator's financial services practice before I started Career Club, worked a lot with the PE side of life. And you're right, deal sourcing is a big deal. There's oceans of money chasing too few good deals. And so being able to identify in that middle market, where are there more cool companies that they could potentially be investing in or develop an investment thesis around is really hard. It's sort of like that pond has been overfished. And
Yeah.
so let's kind of get into the unique value proposition, because you brought up, all the major players, and obviously Google would lead the pack on that, and Bing and Yahoo and whoever else. If you guys are like ostensibly kind of competing, what are you guys doing? What was the need in the market that I can't get to using ordinary tools and data sources?
Yeah. I think you should kind of brought up one of them, which is the pond is being overfished. And that's
Mm-hmm.
because when you look at, if you take every company that's raised money, like that shows up on a news site or gets mentioned in a daily newsletter, you
Yep.
take companies that have a big social media presence, you're talking only a couple 100,000. And there are 10 million businesses in the US. That's a huge delta. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's 98% of businesses just don't have the footprint that the 2% are getting. And you take public companies, that's even smaller. There's only 5,000 of them in the US. So our goal was, how do we make that huge middle market discoverable? How do we democratize that and give, in a way, businesses access to this capital and put them on the same playing field as the ones that are already in the public eye? And you
Mm-hmm.
have anyone in the M&A world. It's not just private equity and growth equity, it's investment bankers, it's even corporates and strategics.
Yep.
They want to know these companies. And so the starting point for us and the core technology that we built around search is, how do I type something into a search box, whether that's a name, a theme, an industry, and get back all the right companies that match that criteria? So I'm really seeing the full universe.
Yep. And again, I was upfront saying that we've recently come to you guys. Original part of our thesis was using company funding, and the idea being that if a company just raised $50 million, the only reason they got that was to scale, and that means by definition that they're hiring. But they're companies, as I always say, with funny names that you never heard of, but they've got money, they've got momentum, and they're hiring. Clearly, the funding environment has changed in the past few months, and that thesis got blown up a little bit. And in the data source that we were looking at, that was very organized around venture capital funding primarily, got really thin really fast from an attribution perspective, to be able to identify more companies when the core thing that you're looking at now isn't funding, it's other attributes of the company. And you're sort of nodding your head knowingly. You want to kind of pick that thread up and work with it?
Yeah, I mean, I personally experienced that. We raised at the beginning of this year, raised a 25 million Series A from Craft Ventures, and everyone was emailing. I got 100 emails in my inbox a day from people pitching us services and products because it signaled to the market that we have funding. And we announced a month or two after we closed the round. We made budget decisions a month before that. So Had they caught me in October, November, we would have signed up. But if you catch me in March or April, it's actually too late. And that's part
Mm,
of the premise of Grata. It's how do you get in front of the best companies first? Because once they're in the news, once they're out in the public eye, it's too late. And as you mentioned, there's some firmographics. You can look at growth of a company. You can look at, are they hiring? There are certain signals, as we say. But what I find even more interesting are business attributes, things that are below the surface and deeper. Let's just say, like, take the industry, take our industry, take software and tech. Everyone likes subscription business
mm,
models,
yeah.
ones that have recurring revenue. And even just knowing that about a business tells you something about it. It tells you about the way that they're growing, the way that they scale. Maybe you want to know if a company has a customer support function. Those are things you don't really think about on the surface because everyone's been trained to think about news and funding. And once you start thinking about the world in a different way, you tend to find more opportunities. I even like to use the Zoom example.
Mm,
Back in 2020, Zoom just blew up because everyone said, wow, video conferencing is the way of the future. We're not in an office. Stock price went through the roof. Now, a really great investor says, let me find the next Zoom. Let me find the ones that are going to win off the tailcoats and the tailwinds of what Zoom did. And so just looking for that theme of video conferencing companies, ones that are meeting a niche that Zoom can't fill, they actually grew. They actually grew under the radar and hidden because they were meeting an unmet need. And that's what we find really interesting.
yeah. So shout out to our account executive from Grata, Kylie, who showed us one of the examples she gave was, if I was a PE firm looking to do a roll up and I was interested in car washes, which is a highly fragmented market, right? There's a gazillion of them. And, but ones, to your point, that had a subscription model because that's interesting. That means they've got ARR and, that would, sort of feed their investment thesis. What is the data source for subscription model car washes in the US? There isn't one. And yet you guys have sort of cracked the code on and how to do that. And obviously without giving away IP, but just sort of thinking about, features and things that make you guys competitive. How is Grata able to identify those sort of companies and make them, accessible almost on the fly?
Yeah, like as I said before, it comes down to a very similar technology that Google uses, to put it quite simply. We are we have bots, we have algorithms, machine learning and natural language processing that read company websites and they interpret them like a human would. Meaning we go into
Mm,
the site and we say, what page are we on? What content are we looking at? What is the sentence? What is the part of speech? What's the subject? And we deconstruct that in a way that, and we store it in a proprietary way to make that searchable by the user. So you're not getting noise, you're not getting things you shouldn't be searching, you're not getting ads and stray text, but you're getting really information about the company talking about its own business. So all that happens in our processing layer using all these different algorithms. And then we present it to the user in an interface where they can then make searches. And so one of the things I love about Grata is the smartest and the most thoughtful users get the most value. But on the flip side, if you're not thinking deeply about markets, right now, we don't do a ton with surfacing insights for you saying, hey, you should be searching this. We're actually working more on search recommendations and suggestions.
mm,
But we really find that the people who are the most thoughtful and think outside the box end up getting the most value from the platform.
mm. As you think about some of the key attributes, and I've got a little bit of familiarity now with the interface, but what are some of the ways that people can think differently to be able to query via Grata?
Yeah, we're starting to call this, it's a way of searching deeper. And it starts with going beyond an industry. And we actually recently released industry classifications in Grata, which was a big machine learning effort on its own to go in and classify 10 million companies with over 95% accuracy. So that took us a while. It took us about 6 months to really build and do it right. But it really goes beyond the industry. Again, Kylie's example of a car wash, 95% of people will search for a car wash and click on the button. They're going to see car washes. But the 5% who think about what's changing in this industry, what do I know from the research and the expertise that I've done about how this industry is shifting or changing, and then what can I query, they're the ones getting the most value, but also they're the ones with the highest returns. They're the ones finding the most clients if it's a use case like yours. So it's a lot of marrying the expertise and what you know outside of Grata, and then using Grata as a tool to then surface those insights to make really good decisions. In this
Yeah.
case, about which companies you want to talk to.
So I'm going to go off script here a little bit, but the way that you were just saying that, Nevin, is really interesting, because what I would say to people who are listening that are charged with company discovery, and as you said, whether it's corporate development, because a lot of companies do innovation by acquisition, right? So how do I go find people that are doing cool things, interesting, in a space that we think has a lot of runway, but we're, for whatever reason, not positioned to go, invest in all these things ourselves from an R&D perspective. But as companies start to get some momentum, if you're CPG, maybe some distribution. Well, maybe now it's time for a Unilever to be looking at companies that are doing interesting things in grooming or whatever, that maybe that's an acquisition target. But how do you learn about, how do you go find people? And so when you start getting into really kind of niche sorts of attributes, like an ingredient that they
Yep.
might be using.
We see that keto-friendly products, charcoal-based toothpaste. If you talk to Unilever, they're going to know virtually every company that's right down the fairway for them. They've been in
Correct.
this industry for decades. But once they realize, hey, the industry is being disrupted, it's changing, or maybe we want a technology or a service that's adjacent to what we do, that opens Pandora's box. And then you don't know the companies, then you don't know how that space is evolving. And that's why I like to think of Grata as powering generally inorganic growth or growth, but
Say that again. Say that again.
powering inorganic and growth.
Yeah.
Because you say, I need to expand my business, I need to do something new or different. That could be acquiring companies, it could be partnering, it could be finding new clients in a space adjacent to you. The function, though, is business development. As we think about where Grata is going in the future and how we think about where search can be used, it's generally for developing a business. As you gave that example of a Unilever and how do we find adjacencies, they may not want to acquire, they may want to invest, like
Correct.
venture funding. They may want to partner. They may want to expand their distribution capabilities if they're looking at new ways of getting their products to market. But there are so many use cases that we get excited about, even though right now we're focused on M&A.
Yeah. So it's just really, really cool. And just what is some of the feedback, if I was talking with one of your clients, what are they saying about Grata and their experience with it?
Yeah, I think they would all say Grata helps me find more of the right stuff. So I get to search deeper beyond what I've been seeing before. I get more volume, efficiency too. We spent a lot of time. Google is an amazing search engine, but it doesn't help with the workflow. Finding just companies, adding them to a list, syncing them with your CRM, finding contact information, taking notes on them, labeling them, all the things that you've maybe done in a database or in Google or in Excel. We bring that together into one spot. And I think that oftentimes gets overlooked in the technology. It's one of our core components and our pillars of how we build Grata. It's search, it's data, and it's workflow.
Yep. Well, it's funny you say workflow. Again, maybe we have a little bit of a different use case compared to your core one, but that was one of the things that also excited us. It was very easy to integrate with export capabilities and things like that into our CRM, and it was just really, really simple. Anything else that we haven't talked, because I want to switch gears for a minute and kind of get into culture and values and some of the things that I know are important, but anything that we haven't talked about in the value proposition before we move on?
Now let's talk about company building.
Yeah. Oh, off you go. There you go. Tell me about company building.
Yeah, something that we've done, I would say in the last year, is we really sat down and we actually did this in a leadership meeting. So we took all the senior leaders of the company. We did an offsite in Brooklyn, and we wanted to think about what is Grata? What does it mean? And actually, we worked with a branding agency before this to revamp our website, and they said, if Grata were a person, what would Grata be like? So we took that and we ran with it. And I think they did a really good job of understanding me and my co-founder Andrew and our personalities and capturing that. But we said, what do we value? Because that is the core of how we make decisions. Every new hire we make. And at the time we were 30, yeah, probably 30, 35 employees. We're now close to 80. And so we knew we
Nice.
were going to hire a lot of people. We knew that we had to make decisions about not just talent, but how we market, how we speak to clients, customers, users,
Mhm.
prospects. And so we landed on four core values. And those, and we try to keep it simple. We came up with a lot of ideas, try to keep it simple to what we really value. And this flows through everyone at Grata. But the first value is excellence. We have a really high bar of to be at Grata for our product, for ourselves, for how we handle everything we do, and that's excellence. The second one is growth. We realize that with excellence, we're not perfect, and we're always growing, changing, adapting. Things break, and we have to fix them. And the other one is transparency. That's to everyone. Yeah, I told you about how our technology works. We share financials with the company. Even feedback that we give is very transparent. And the last one, and the one that I'm most excited about, is community. And that
Mm.
is not just within Grata, but it's Grata with the outside world as well, and how we be part of, in our case, the M&A community and the greater business development community.
Mm. So those are really good. I was reading an article this morning. I want to say it was in the journal, but it was by a professor at Stanford, and he was talking about keeping it simple. It was a lot about simplification, but it was funny you said four in values. He's like, you don't want more than four. People can't keep up with it. It's too many, and it starts to dilute the most important ones when you have too many. So that's cool
I agree
that
with
you've
that.
got those. Um, One of the things I always like to ask executives when we are talking about values is, where you see them really kind of coming into play in the real world. You had talked about, and I think they sound like they're very related. The way that you were describing growth and transparency, and things break, and we're kind of building the plane in flight, and things don't always go according to plan. How do you give me an example, or how you would think about some of these values coming into
Yeah.
play in the real world?
Let's start with community. That's the easiest one, the most tangible one to talk about. There, there's some kind of cliche startup ways of building community. But let me tell you what's unique about Grata today. And I think these are really special. One thing that we've done that's a little different from your typical tech startup is we actually have an office and people actually come to the office. And we're
Oh my
in
gosh,
3 days
really?
a week. We do Wednesdays and Fridays from home. People are in Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And it's a really cool community. We have a space that feels more homely. We have couches. We have what you would expect in a startup like office, but it's very different from what I've seen a lot of our peers and other startups really just moving away to a distributed workforce and people. And
Mhm.
we definitely have remote employees. That's part of the modern way of operating company. And we value that. We also value having a central location and a hub where people can come together. And one of the unique things that we've done as part of having this office centric culture is we have something called a culture committee. And this actually came because we realized we have a head of people and ops, and we have myself kind of working to make the office a good place to be. But we realized that two people can't carry culture. And we asked people to volunteer to join this culture committee. And organically, we had one person from each team volunteer. So from every sales pod, customer success, every engineering team, and that was just natural and organic, and I thought it was really cool. And so the culture committee really takes any type of culture events from happy hours to office snacks, and they lead that. And we say, hey, this is not one or two people making the decision. Everyone at the company owns the decision. So if we want cold brew over bananas, that's a decision the committee makes. And therefore, everyone feels this ownership of the office and that it's actually them owning the community. And that's been great. And even within that, something really special about community is we created this concept called a funded interest group, excuse me, which is called a FIG for short. And this is actually inspired by my days at Harvard. So the story of I was in a group at Harvard that we had this thing called a party grant, where every week you could apply for funding from the university to host a party. And we would only fund non-alcoholic items. So if you have a party, we'll fund your pizza. We'll fund burgers. We'll fund decorations, water, alternatives. And the whole point was we realized in college people may uh, there may be some underage drinking. There may be things going on that may not make it the safest environment, but we want to give and reduce risk and give people an option to have an alternative. And that was a
Mm.
really cool way to actually say, hey, my party's funded, and I can like feel like I have university support to create a safe space. Similar to that, we have a funded interest group concept where people can apply for funding to start their own group. And it can be recurring, it can be one time. So we have a fantasy football league. We
Yeah.
have a Broadway group. They go to Broadway shows once a month. We have a group that does cooking and a weightlifting group. And there are so many different book clubs. We have all these like little pockets of 4, 5, 6 people that get together, and Grata pays for them to meet each other, bond, and just build those relationships outside the four walls of our office.
I think that's super cool. One of the things that we talk about at Career Club a lot is community and being human centric. And what you guys are addressing, this is really fun to learn about, is really kind of addressing a little bit more the whole person. People talk about bringing your whole self to work. People talk about diversity, and we do a lot, particularly with our HR oriented guests. And what's cool about what you guys are doing is you're kind of backing up your smack. It's one thing to say that, but when you're actually getting the checkbook out and encouraging people and saying, no, we think this is cool. And we want you guys to get to know each other, and not just as a work producing unit, but as a complete human being that, has interests outside of Grata. Yeah, we think that that's cool. I think too, you're kind of office centric while still recognizing the realities, as you said, of the modern workplace, is important, because people do want to feel like they belong to something. I mean, I'm at the front of the line of enjoying the flexibility and freedom to work from home, but that does come at some fairly significant costs from relationships, knowledge sharing, innovation. I mean, there's a few. And creating a place compared to JP Morgan, you will be in the office, or Tesla, you will be in the office, or Apple. It's like, no, we actually made a place people actually want to come to, not, under
Exactly.
threat of your employment. So that's really, really cool. That's a great example. So thank you.
Yeah, and even with that flexible work option, we piloted something over the last couple of years that we get excited about, which is called our winter from home. And right now it's just the month of February, but that's the month that not only do you stay home, the office is closed, but we encourage people to travel and go somewhere in the world for a month, and realize that it's hard to do that if you have a family and young kids, or depending on your
Mhm.
position. But we try to encourage it. And when we like people to go out and explore, and come back in the winter when there are virtually no holidays, come back feeling fresh and refreshed as we enter spring.
Well, and that's the beauty of travel too, right? Is you see new things, and it sparks creativity because you've got new stimuli that you hadn't really been exposed to before. Talk a little bit about, you mentioned financials, but transparency. What does that mean? How does that show itself at Grata?
Yeah, I like to think of transparency, if I just bring it down to the core, is everyone understanding the why. We could make a policy decision. Why did you make that?
Hmm.
A counter example I like to give is when you're at school and the loudspeaker goes off, they make an announcement. School is closing early, or everyone report to the cafeteria. You don't know why. No one explains why. We take the opposite approach. We tell you, hey, we're making this decision. Here's why we're doing it. Here's our rationale. Here's the input we got. We're very data driven and analytical in everything we do. So people understand the why. And that starts from decisions, but it boils down to, why am I working on what I'm working? How does it impact the company? What's my impact, not just on top line, revenue, bottom line, but the valuation and the product and community we're building. So I think if you ask anyone at Grata what they're working on, why it's important, they should be able to answer exactly why. We also share all of our internally, we share every week. We show our metrics so everyone knows financials, retention. Everyone knows what our marketing leads were, how many demos we got each week. And if they're really paying attention, you could get a full financial profile every single Monday morning. We also should keep an open financial model so anyone can open it up. It's just in our Google Drive and take a look at how the company's performing because we like to, no surprises, we like to show the fruits of people's labor and what they're building and what they're selling, how that actually impacts the way the business is growing.
Very, very cool. What happens when something goes sideways?
Yeah, that's always hard with transparency because something goes sideways. To maintain transparency, you have to still communicate that. And like I said, along with growth, things break. The classic example is we were in one floor in an office, around the seventh floor, and we had, I think, like 50 people in a space that should have had no more than 40. So chairs were bumping against each other. It was really cramped. I think we had not the right ratio of people to bathrooms and all this stuff going on. And we said, okay, well, let's go get another floor in the building. So we got the 10th floor. And then instantly things started going wrong. The AC wasn't working this summer. Internet was disruptive. There was a leak with debris falling from the ceiling. Everything you can expect to go wrong went wrong. And we had to fix it. So we had to be very transparent about, hey, we made this move to this 10th floor. We know things are going wrong. We know it's disrupting the work environment. If you have to work from home, work from home. We'll fix the internet. We have to just keep communication very clear as to what we're doing, what we tried, why it didn't work. So we try to keep the lines of communication open when things are going wrong so people understand the why. Again, it comes back to the why. It's not that if you just say, hey, the internet's broken, you don't provide a why, but you say, hey, we tested it. The wired connection works. We called in a firm. They tried this method and that didn't fix it, or Macs are broken and PCs are fine. At least people understand that you're putting effort and you're actually trying to solve the problem. I think it comes down to communication.
Yeah. So I worked at a startup a few years ago, and transparency to a fault was one of the core values. And it was very, very cool to see how people were actually management was really walking that talk. So that's very, very cool. As you guys continue to grow, because that's one of your pillars, obviously you continue to take on talent, and you talked about you went from 30 to, I think you said 80 something, and I suspect that you'll continue to grow. When you're interviewing people, Nevin, what are some of the character attributes? What are you interviewing for?
Yeah, it's a good question. It changes with the role. It changes with the level of seniority we expect. And I think that spectrum has to do with more senior roles. We expect more experience. More junior roles, we're looking for more of that hunger and willingness to learn. But I would say generally there's some themes that come across everyone. Number one is we're looking for problem solvers. I like to say if you're not solving problems, you're creating problems. And that's really important. Number two is we want people that want to tackle the most challenging and unsolved problems. Most of what we do, there is no solution. I know when I was a consultant and worked for big companies, we would go to one client to the next. We would have seen the problem somewhere else, and we know how to tackle it. And there are definitely some of those here. People who have been through a startup have probably experienced what we've experienced and have solved it. But especially on the technical side and the engineering side, a lot of what we do does not have a right or wrong answer. No one's solved it before. We're building fundamentally new technology. And so we need someone who's excited by that and wants to tackle that and wants to realize that you may plan to do something for a month, it may take 3 months to solve, but you're going to fundamentally build something new. And it's not going to be an incremental change. It's going to be a big stepwise change. The other one is we look for people who are, and these are aligned to our values, right? Excellence, growth. The other one is people who are humble. Everyone at Grata, there's no egos at Grata. Everyone's a fast learner. They want to be coached through to get better. And we actually do that in our interview process. We like to coach candidates through the process, especially on the sales side. For example, if you're giving a demo, we do a training session to walk you through how to demo Grata. So you're just not thrown into an interview saying, hey, demo this product. And that I think speaks to it. And I learned that from working at McKinsey, where they would coach you through the case interview process, because it's not about how much do you know. It's about when taught, can you actually learn that? Are you receptive to feedback, and are you a fast learner who's going to figure it out?
Yeah. Yeah, so we had this is live television right now. So we did an interview with Steve Cadigan, who was LinkedIn's first CHRO, and when they went from like 1,000 to 4,000 employees or something insane. And in Workquake, which is a book that he published last year, one of the key points is the competitive advantage is agile learning, because technology is constantly changing, and whatever you were an expert in 3 years ago is probably being replaced right now. So that's cool that you had deep subject matter expertise in the last thing, but we need you now to be able to learn the next thing and then the next thing. And so that learning agility that you were talking about, and you guys are sort of figuring that out on the fly in the interview process, is really cool.
I love that term, learning agility.
You can borrow that one. There you go. And hashtag Steve Cadigan. So, do you have a favorite interview question or a way that you like try and get somebody to reveal something about themselves, not in a sneaky way, but you find it to be revealing?
I'd be giving away my secrets, but I guess that's what I owe you, at least one of them. I
Transparency.
I actually really like to ask, "What do you do for fun?"
Mm.
And it's used in a lot of interviews. I try to phrase it in ways outside of the standard way. I'll say like, "Okay, you clearly work a lot. What do you do when you're not working? What do you do in your spare time?" That can tell you a lot about someone, how they spend their spare time, and it's never in a bad way. You just want to know what's on their mind when they're not in the office, when they're not working. And
Hmm.
you'll see some people are very intellectually curious and they're always exploring new hobbies and they're trying to learn something new. Others are very regimented. They say, "Oh, I go to the gym 5 days a week for 2 hours. I do the same workout." Other people are family oriented. Hey, like I spend time with my kids and my significant other. But it can just tell you what someone values and what they think about. And then
Hmm.
I think knowing that helps you understand the people you're working with. And when we think about community at Grata, we don't think about fit. I try to never use the word they're a good fit. I always try to say they're a cultural add, because it's not about fitting into a mold. It's about adding to the community. And that's how we like to celebrate diversity.
So that is such an interesting point. You're the second person in 3 days who has said something about eschewing the notion of cultural fit, because there's an element of conformity to that. The term that he was using, this is the CEO of the Society of Human Resources Management, SHRM, which is the largest professional organization in the world, and yeah, like every HR professional is a member of SHRM. And what Johnny was talking about is cultural alignment. So it's not like, can you fit in this box, but are you aligned with sort of the direction? So are you aligned with our values?
Yep.
In your
That's
case,
what we like to say, value alignment, but cultural add.
yeah. So I'm making notes myself, because I think that's a very good ad. I mean, words have power, and words mean something, and it's not just kind of being semantical just for fun and like, well, I said it a different way. I just think that that's really an interesting way to talk about value alignment, but cultural ads. That's cool. So I'm not sure kind of weird stuff we've got going on in the comments here, but we'll leave that alone. Um, and then I guess lastly, we usually will talk about, because we're talking about talent, are there some certain roles that you're looking for right now that would be of particular priority for you guys?
Yeah, I would describe Grata as builders and sellers. And so two of the core groups are engineering and our commercial groups, which are sales, marketing, customer success. Right now, we are really focused on some of the engineering and technical hires. I think one role that's critical for us is search engineers. There are not a lot of search engineers out there, but there are a lot of people out there who could do search and who are interested in search. And so if you're interested in understanding how search works and its value and how to apply it in a SaaS model, we're definitely in the market for search engineers, machine learning as well, and then data engineers. Those are some of our three key roles that we're looking to fill. And in the next 6 to 9 months, like over the early part of next year, we have we built a pretty strong foundation for Grata. What we're looking to fill are some of those operational roles that actually straddle two groups and that sit at the intersection of the different departments we've built. I call that the connective tissue. An
Mm.
example would be sales enablement. It's not quota carrying sales, but it's really working with marketing and product to give sales the right material and the right talk track for all their conversations. Or
Yes.
with sales ops to sit between sales and finance, product marketing that sits between product and marketing. Those are some of the gaps at Grata that we will look to fill very soon.
Real quick, just back on search, because again, that's another niche sort of a thing. And you said even if they don't have experience, are there things that you believe or you found that would be more adjacent to be a fit for search engineering?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of people coming from e-commerce backgrounds. We actually have brought a few people on our team who have been in the e-com world. Searching for a product is strikingly similar to searching for a
Yeah.
company, believe it or not. When you filter on shirts, then you're looking.
Got a little bit of a freeze here, I think. Wait for Nevin's connection to come back.
Hey, Bob, did I lose you for a minute?
Yeah, just for a second you froze. So you
I was
say
saying
it's eerily similar to like searching for a shirt.
e-commerce. Yeah. E-commerce is very similar, even real estate. And that's in a way a type of investing. If you're buying a home or renting an apartment, you're putting capital actually in the private markets just towards real physical asset. So real estate, e-commerce tend to have really strong parallels to what we do, and they've been the best historically in the search world outside of general Google search. And so we
Yeah.
see a lot of good talent and a lot of crossover and a lot of people who maybe were back end engineers in some of these industries that maybe worked on a project in search or were on a squad in search and then rotated out and really are passionate about it and interested in it.
No, super, super helpful. Is there, because I'm being mindful of your time and our listeners' time, is there anything that we haven't covered, Nevin, that you would want to make sure that you leave people with?
I think this was very comprehensive, Bob. I mean, some of my parting words is we're just excited about what we're building at Grata. Honored to be here on Cool Companies with you. I mean, as you can tell, I am very passionate about everything we do and excited about the year and more that's to come.
Well, and I would say again, at the risk of being shameless, we have just had nothing but a very positive experience with you guys. The onboarding, the sales process, the contracting process, most importantly, the tool and actually using it and starting to get our feet wet with it has been really a positive experience. And as you said earlier, the more you put into it, probably the more you're going to get out of it. And so we're super early days. So I'm looking forward as we develop our own kind of Grata expertise, to kind of milking more value out of the tool. But one of the things that I love about doing these episodes is the tool is really important, but you are equally passionate, maybe even more, about the culture, talking about excellence and growth and transparency and community, and really kind of doubling down on community, which I think is great. And it's so important for listeners to really kind of hear the soul and the spirit behind just the technology. And I've learned a lot today and reinforced some things I felt like I already knew, and shed some light on some new things. So thank you again for value alignment and cultural add. That is a big take for me. But yeah, anyway, this has been great. Thank you so much. If people want to learn more about Grata, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, check out our website at grata.com, grata.com. You can get in touch with us, request a demo, get in touch with us there. And we are always happy to chat because your community is our community.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, Nevin, great talking with you today. Thank you again for sharing all things Grata with us. We wish you nothing but continued success. We know that's what's in store for you, and hope you enjoy the rest of your week.
Bob, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Glad to be on today.